Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Katatonia, Sky Void of Stars, out January 20th on Napalm Records. The album has 11 tracks, 50 minutes in length, and this is the band's 12th full-length studio album. They are a Swedish progressive doom metal band. From a design point of view, this album has three great elements. One is that it has ebbs and flows, but it's not incredibly dynamic. It's very subtle in how it changes from song to song, and you don't notice necessarily the differences until you're already in the middle of them. The other aspect of this record is that it's an album that's very fluid, but it doesn't rush the listener through it. It allows you to digest every single moment of it. And last but not least, the album has incredible individual songs that stand out from one another, but still keeping themselves grounded and connected to the same roots. This allows the experience to be one that gives strength within the individuality of the songs to the overall collective. You need that in order for the record to feel like a record. And this album feels like a record, but it's not overly cohesive that you can't see the forest from the trees. You're able to identify the individuality of the tracks and what you can get from them, but at the same time you can see that they're all building blocks in order to finish off the wall that becomes the entire record. As far as the sound is concerned, I felt like the production behind this album was very important for the overall design and for the overall experience. This is an album that gives you different experiences with each and every single song, even though all of them have a very similar starting point. And that's where the production comes in. You have to create a foundation. You have to create something that unifies the tracks without necessarily defining them. And this allows you to go into different avenues. It allows you to be more progressive, it allows you to be more post-rock, it allows you to be more rock, more doom, and still feel like all of these songs belong together. And that's exactly the sound on this album. A very diverse record, a very progressive record, not necessarily from a pure progressive standpoint, but from the diversity of elements and the diversity of growth that every song gives and the sound within those songs offer. From that point of view, it is a progressive album. It is a very progressive album, but still keeping everything grounded allows this record to feel like a record, even though the sound experiences are slightly different or sometimes very different from song to song. Great life, great dynamic, great soundscape all around. A soundscape that's defined by three elements first and foremost. And this is not to say that the bass doesn't play a role throughout this record, because it does. A lot of the melancholy, a lot of the sadness, a lot of the darkness that this album offers is at first hand defined by how the bass and how by the bass lines impact the overall structure of the songs. But they become one of those layers that are underneath everything else. The layers that stand on top are definitely the guitars and drums. In the middle you have the synths and keys, and then at the bottom you have the bass. I want to start off by talking a little bit about the synths, the middle layer if you will, the synths and keys. This is a record that uses them, doesn't abuse them. They create more atmosphere, they create more definition, definitely offering layers and texture, making the songs slightly bigger, but not necessarily epic. They just feel like they have a heartbeat, or they help define the heartbeat of the songs, allowing for growth, allowing for expansion, and at the same time including the bass in order to contract them ever so slightly. This is the formula of those two elements at the bottom layers of the overall song designs. Then on top you have the drums and you have the guitars. The drums on this album are very warm. They're very earthy, but not overly earthy. So they walk a fine line between grounding the record and over-grounding the record. I felt like the warmth in their sound was really important to pass the message along. A message of melancholy, which tends to be a characteristic element of Katatonia. Now this element is not just about melancholy, because there's a lot of light, there's a lot of brightness throughout this entire album, there's a lot of intensity, there's also a lot of heaviness. And the drums always stay warm, always stay in between these worlds, and pushing one or the other depending on where the direction of the guitars are going. Because this album is predominantly defined by the guitar sound and the direction that it takes. The more progressive songs, the less progressive songs, the most post-rock songs, the more doom tracks, the guitars seem to be the catalyst of everything that's happening sound-wise. The drums become that companion that helps develop, that helps to shape that experience, either with a heaviness or with that warmth sound that brings melancholy into the forefront. The guitar performance throughout the album is exquisite because it's not over the top, It's not overly progressive when it comes to the guitars. It's not overly technical, but it adds elements that create a texture, that create nuance, that give you a sense of 4D. You're not just listening to songs, you can almost smell them, you can feel them, you can touch them. All of these elements are predominantly coming from the guitars, their execution, the sound, the balance that they give, and the growth and movement that they add to each and every single track. The vocals are a little bit more consistent from start to finish, but Jonas is Jonas. He has an incredible tonality, he has an incredible delivery. There's a few songs here and there that he pushes a little bit more, that he adds a little bit more intensity to his delivery, but overall he's in the pocket, very consistent from start to finish. I enjoyed the layers that they used throughout the album. I thought songs that needed a little bit more volume, that needed to be a little bit more thick, adding layers to his vocals or overdubbing his vocals really helps create that sense of thickness without having to change, without having to make his voice feel different. It's still Jonas coming through with that warmth and the sound that he provides with his vocal approach, but those layers create a little bit more of him. You're getting more of him on those tracks. And some songs going almost more with an electronic sound. It also matches the characteristics of those tracks. So there are some ripples as far as the vocals are concerned, but they stay overall very grounded, very connected to what we've come to expect from Katatonia. All around, this album is not just melancholic and dark. It also offers a different kind of experience. It offers a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. It's hopeful, is what I'm trying to say here. And when you have an album that is hopeful at certain key points within it, you're better at digesting the overall darkness and melancholy that it offers. It doesn't feel too heavy on your shoulders. It doesn't drain you down. This is an album that has 50 minutes in length, but it's easy to digest this duration of a record when you have that balance, when you have that sort of hopefulness nature to the sound, at least in key moments of the record, so that you're able to come up for air and not just feel completely consumed by everything that surrounds you. As far as favorite tracks are concerned, I want to start off with Colossal Shade. A gritty, heavy guitar sound, and the drums help define that heaviness and that grit. Overall, is not overly heavy, but you could feel the thickness of those two elements individually and then as one. Adding layers to the vocals adds that same thickness of the sound to the vocal performance, so everything has a parallel and they work really well as a parallel of each other, allowing the two elements to push you forward, always with the same intent, always with the same sort of aggressive nature behind it. This allows the melancholy or the melancholy side of the track to creep in, dip out, creep in, dip out. This is a song that still has that substance to it, but the overall feel of thickness and heaviness is what overtakes the song and becomes the calling card of the track throughout, even though the song doesn't stay consistently heavy or thick from start to finish. Next we have Drab Moon, a methodic and melancholic track first and foremost. It has a great bass tone. The bass on this track it's outstanding. A lot of the definition of this song, the shape of this song, how you feel towards it, the impact that it has, that melancholy, that darkness, it comes from that bass line, or at least that is the key element that allows you to better grasp it, to better understand it. It helps define this underbelly that the song has. The song has movement in its sound, and in certain heaviness and key points, it increases the volume of the track. So it's almost like you have a box and you know there's something inside of it, and it's calm until you open, just like Pandora's box. Once you open, that aggression, that intensity, everything comes into the forefront, the track gains a lot more life, and then once you close it again, everything goes back into that calm. This track is a little bit like that. Using the synths creates an important atmospheric element for this track. It allows the track to be better defined and definitely allows the atmosphere of the track to be better noticed. So it's an important element, but one that almost goes unnoticed in the overall haze that this song creates. Last but not least, one of my favorite tracks on this record, Author. Great guitar sound, great vocals. It has a little bit more of a penetrating experience. Still melancholic, still dark, and it often infuses some heaviness, specifically as you get into the chorus. This is a song that has verses and chorus, and you build up. There isn't a switch, but there's a gradual exponential growth from one to the other, and then the song becomes a lot more heavy, a lot more intense once you reach that chorus. but the penetrating experience that the vocals have in that movement and that the guitar sound has in that same movement, accompanying the vocals extremely well, becomes the motor that brings you along for the ride, that brings you along from the first starting point all the way to the finish line. I love the movement of the track. I love the experience of the track. I love the fact that they kept this track very close to its own nature, but at the same time allowing this exponential growth, allowing this more penetrating sound. Definitely defines the song better, and it definitely gives you a better defined sense of progression. Really interesting song. Vocally felt to me a little bit more intense. It felt a little bit more abrasive, a little bit more in your face, at least at times, and that broke the mold from previous songs and allows this track to kind of reset your expectations in the overall context of this record. This is it, Katatonia with Sky Void of Stars, out January 20th on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.